When I was born, my father was composing and teaching, and there was always music in the house.
My parents were both members of the Cleveland Orchestra. I grew up in a very musical household.
It was very much a family.
Oh, I started playing when I was
4 when
half years
my
old.
I always
My father
figured
was
that
a
I would
violinist.
be
I wanted to play Paulson Opera
violin, and they
Orchestra.
said,
And
very
he had
unusual
been
in
the
that-
famous
in the
string
sense
quartet for
that,
2
war is
years
really
right
too
after
young.
the Second World
I
War.
started
Bush
in the
Quartet.
public school system.
Really sure you want to do
But right
this?
after
Well,
that,
not
he
a
joined
choice.
Matt,
And it was being offered. My
playing
son
in
now,
As soon as I
so
dropped
talks
the
to
cello,
his
I
Westchester.
knew
If you still feel
They
you want to do it on your
require
5th birthday,
that the fourth graders play.
My father played in a quartet made up of 4 members of the Cleveland Orchestra. So as a kid, I always heard them rehearsing. They would always rehearse at my mother at my parents' house because my mother was such a good cook.
So I grew up with a very musical atmosphere and constant talk about operas, symphonies, chamber music.
And when I was about 10, I started playing the cello. I had studied the rudiments of music with my father previously. And as soon as I took the cello, I just knew I liked it.
What made me go in and pick the violin? It's a good question.
I, at the age of 4, went into my parents' bedroom and said, I want to play the violin. And they said, you're too young.
My uncle, who was a cellist, called up and said, you should get this recording by this guy named Rostropovich. We had never heard of him, so my parents found this recording, put it on, and I heard him play, and that was it. I was on fire from this guy.
And I said, okay, so how old do I need to be? And they said, well, if you still feel you want to do it on your 5th birthday, then we'll get you a violin. So on my 5th birthday, apparently I got up at like 5 o'clock in the morning and came in and like knocked on the door and said, okay, where's my violin?
I was so excited by this cello playing. I just said to myself, I want to play the cello just like that. And I started practicing like mad.
Played violin really to my last year of high school, and then I started playing some viola, and I enjoyed that.
Eventually, I sort of, my skill caught up to my ambition, and I started winning some competitions. And
When I was 13 and a half, I started studying with the great musician who influenced me in so many ways for the rest of my musical life, probably up till now and beyond, Oscar Shumsky.
And I decided I really want to study with Shumsky. And I came to New York and met Gene, who was also in Shumsky's class. And
A great admiration for the teacher of Gene and Phil, Oscar Shumsky. So he's very important for us.
And so I met, for the first time, kids from the Juilliard School, from Juilliard Prep, very, very talented New York kids. I was a little bit intimidated by this being a New Jersey boy because they were very slick.
I was in the main division of the Juilliard School.
I soon got over really fearing them. Shumsky treated me very well.
Phil Setzer and I went to the Queen Elizabeth competition where we were prize winners, finalists.
we were the only 2 Americans to make the finals. And actually, we really helped each other through that experience. It wasn't easy. We didn't win one of the top prizes, and we decided that we really wanted to make a go with the quartet.
And all these interesting possibilities came up.
I had begun a real friendship with Phil, and we became quite close, and I knew that he had this quartet, which was just starting out, and that they were hot stuff.
Eric Wilson, the cellist, was a very good friend of ours, and Guillermo Figueroa, the original violist of the group, was a student of Oscar Shumsky. He was a violinist, and also a good friend of ours. He just decided after a certain point that he didn't want to concentrate so much on playing viola.
And there was that opening, and I auditioned.
And Larry Dutton was our choice.
I went to their debut concert at Alice Tully Hall. I remember them playing a very, very difficult program, and I remember thinking, wow, this is really incredible. This is beyond anything I could ever conceive of doing.
And we had our next major change of personnel and our last change of personnel in the fall of '79, when our original cellist, Eric Wilson, accepted a teaching position in Canada.
Phil showed up one day at the house with a bottle of scotch and said, I have to talk to you. So I went in a little room, my guest room, and poured out a couple of scotches, started drinking. He started talking about the quartet and how wonderful it was, and then he announced to me that their cellist had decided to leave, and he wanted me to audition. And having had enough scotch at that point, not be able to say no.
David Finkel came into the group.
But it really didn't become the Emerson Quartet until David came in, until that really cemented the chemistry and cemented what the quartet was about.
There's no way to describe somebody who has never done it, what it feels like to step into a pre-formed and well-honed ensemble, pre-existing ensemble. It's like putting your hand into the most perfect fitting, comfortable glove that you can imagine. I was thrilled.